Howdy, of you delicious people. I'm here today to review the first 5 episodes of High School of the Dead. So, recently, I believe I originally had reviewed this entire first season on my original channel. But I think when really looking back at this, I think the original review was kind of littered with certain kind of visual things because eventually this season gets very, let's just say, fan service, if you know what I mean. Meaning, basically, it's quite obvious that a lot of the visuals are to be done to showcase the woman in all of her glory, let's just say. But, anyways, going into this show, I think immediately the thing that I take from this show is just how I love the viciousness of the show and how all of a sudden people actually start to turn on one another. And I think that is the best part. Or people just start to lose their effing minds or cannot control what is going on with any of their characters. I really enjoy the panic of an anime because that rarely happens in an animated thing, a cartoon, or whatever it ends up being. Like a lot of the times there is always these like slow motion movements that happen a lot, instead of a lot of panic going on, from some of the stuff that I've seen. But I know a lot of people are like, oh no, you just haven't seen the right anime. But that's completely and utterly fine. Going into this anime, it's like, well, of course this is a zombie this is a zombie show, I mean. And recently when going into it, I think that this is the best way to approach this. I honestly think that there isn't a lot of there's like a lot of times when you have to have it to where there's like a Tokyo Ghoul kind of approach where you have to have main character who becomes this monster and they have to deal with that kind of thing. But in this show, it's just like, oh no, like we just have people that just have to forcibly survive this environment, survive this scenario, and have a lot of big chest women while this whole thing is going on. Some characters are fairly smart. Some of them are dumb as F. But when going along into this journey, the thing that really sticks in my mind the most is just the interesting visuals that end up being consistently just laid into this show. We have to where at some point we have certain characters that I may not be able to say exactly what their names are, because there's so many of them. But it is kind of interesting to see how eventually these characters end up going and are to eventually maybe killed off at some point also. So, yeah, I thought that this show was so interesting that I had to rewatch it again to re-review it because I think that this show is freaking amazing, and I know a lot of people will remember this show because even at some point we end up having PewDiePie at some point through his YouTube channel mentioning about this anime. So, like when looking at it, like yeah, this anime has kind of stood the test of time, and like along with animes like Prison School and a lot of other animes along those lines, where it's just kind of like a very memorable, stick in your head kind of thing, like a Naruto or a I don't know, whatever. So going into this, let's go into we gotta probably just get into spoilers, right? Because recently it's straight up simple forward. It's a zombie movie and it's basically how are people in a school like environment going to deal with this? And really that's just the first 5 episodes for you. We really have it to where we have these episodes stretched out into otherwise dealing with people either turning into a zombie or being bitten by zombies or being killed off or eventually escaping, and eventually what is to go on with that, and everybody going on their own way of trying to survive this whole onslaught of the zombie apocalypse. So, with that said, I think it's about time to go into spoilers about this, because reasonably it's either you're going to be interested right away, or you're just going to say, I don't know. If you're really on the fence with this anime, like, really, I love the aggressiveness that this anime goes into. It has a lot of aggressive attacks. Like, it has a really really very much a quick paced anime, which that's what I thoroughly enjoy about this is how all of a sudden somebody could just be waking up one day and they seek outside their hotel building like a swarm of zombies, and now they have to figure out how to be able to get to point A to point B with all of these zombies kind of going on. I think that's the most interesting part about this show is just the obstacle course that these zombies pretty much end up becoming. It's really interesting. So, let's go out of our way to say that we've seen this show and review it. So, let's go on to that double five to otherwise say it's about that time to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil. Delayed. This show. So we have it to where spoilers now. I think the best part of these first 5 episodes, the one amazing thing that I think will sell you on this show if you aren't exactly already sold. Oh my god, the two girls then end up going hand to hand through this classroom to eventually have one girl getting grabbed by this zombie. And so this girl is saying to her best friend, like, hey, best friend, like, please help me, because I know we were going to be best friends forever and we were going to stick together. And this girl immediately, this girl that was holding this other girl's hand was immediately just like, get away from me, you infected bit. And then so she ends up like kicking this girl away to get eaten up by zombies for this girl to just continue, just to be able to just continue to just walk on just unaffected. I'm like, oh my god, like, we immediately have these two girls that mentioned, oh, we're going to be the best friends and we're going to try to survive this. And immediately once somebody goes down, they're just like, yeah, F you, like, sucks to be you, like I'm going to throw you off to the side and I'm just going to go on and survive. Like, that's kind of how this show really breaks down, is we have it to where we have people that are turning on one another. Immediately they're just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to use you as a human shield whenever this event comes up, and then I'm going to slip out of here. Because we end up having the teacher ended up doing the same thing within this episode. So let's rear back and let's get to the very beginning of this episode. So I would say that this show is an ensemble piece, but we also have seemingly one guy that seems to also be like the main focus, and then we just have beautiful looking women surrounding him, kind of thing. Because we have it to where there are very few guys that really do technically make it out of this whole zombie apocalypse. And we have it to where there's one guy with a nail gun and one guy with, I believe, a bat, which eventually he gets a gun later on. So we, within these first 5 episodes, I'm just kind of tailor making it to these first 5 episodes. I've seen the whole show, but we'll get there. So we have it to where really the focus of the beginning of this is on the school rooftop, where we seemingly have uh Kamuro, I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Kamuro and Rai and Hizashi, I believe that's his name. They're all on rooftops fighting off these zombies, and we end up having Hizashi, who is fighting these zombies off via hand. Like, so this guy is kind of skilled in combat, but what is that going to do when you just have a very skilled zombie that knows how to exactly bite you in the right place, if you know what I mean? So we end up having it to where we have Komaru who has like a bat in hand. We end up having, I think, Rai who ends up having like some like stick or like staff kind of thing, and she is trying to defend herself with that. And I'm like, dude, you know what? I would rather have, if I'm gonna be in a zombie apocalypse, I would much rather, if I can't have like a gun in hand, I would much rather have like a bat or a sword or like something that has like a heavy end to it. I would never want something that is like a full on like just staff, because really all that you can do with a staff kind of thing is just like create distance. And I guess that could be a good weapon to have, like somebody with the staff kind of like shoving the zombie out of the way for the guy with the bat to just go pia and death. But anyways, moving on. So we have it to where there's an onslaught going on in this roof, kind of showcasing like these people are just like, oh my god, they're in real deal survival mode. And so we have to eventually wind back the time a little bit to showcase like how we got to this kind of point. And so eventually it kind of shows these kids eventually going to school, and then one by one eventually they're getting like a notice or whatever that like there's an outbreak or there's an illness happening. And so people are one by one eventually getting infected and so on and so forth, and it's just like really mass affecting this entire school and ba 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 ba. So we go back to like, because we have a tour, we have like some kind of lead up, and it goes right back into the moment of these kids realizing how bad this infection is. And so they are to now realize like, hey dude, we need to go to the rooftop. And so we end up having these people just making like we have uh Kamuro, Rai, and Hizashi are all fighting these guys off rooftop, and we end up having it to where Hizashi tries to help Rai, or Rai. I don't remember exactly how her name was pronounced. The orange haired looking girl with the staff. Hizashi eventually ends up trying to defend, I believe, Rai, and he ends up getting bitten and he ends up getting infected. And so we end up having Hizashi telling Kamuro that he's like, well, I'm going to turn soon. So, Kamuro, you need to help me, like, basically come to an end here. So, Hizashi thinks that he's like, well, it looks like that ground is low enough. Like maybe you can help me. Just like maybe I'm just gonna jump off. Maybe that's how I'll end it. Before, but we end up having Hizashi. He ends up turning into a zombie, and so Kamuro ends up making his mission to try to kill this guy so that way he won't be a zombie forever. So he ends up going out of his way to kill Hizashi as a zombie. And so we end up having it to where uh, we have eventually some of the girls going through this school, and eventually we have one guy who ends up losing his mind because of this zombie apocalypse, and he ends up deciding like, oh my god, like craziness is happening, and like he's so severely depressed and he's so severely insane that he ends up taking his own life and jumping off the school, and so we have two girls just tra la 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 la. Hey, we're gonna make it out of this alive because we're best of friends. And then immediately when the zombie like pulls at this girl's leg, and she's like, "Oh, are you gonna help me, my bestest friend?" And the girl's like, "No, like get your hands off me, you dang dirty ape," kind of thing. And then she just like kicks her off, and then just goes off walking because she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna survive this, and you're gonna die. Sucks to be you." And so then this girl is just consumed by these zombies and killed, and it's awful. But it's amazing. That's the best part of this whole anime. So we have it to where these people decide, well, like the roof isn't going to work to just like to make it here. So we end up having Kamuro and Rai deciding that they're going to make their way back down through the school to make their way to the buses to try to get out of here. And so we end up having these two make their way to a girl named Uri and a guy named Kata or Kota. Kota ends up having a nail gun weapon that he is firing off, and we end up having Uri. I think her name is Uri. It's the pink girl with the kind of the kind of the double bund esh like thing. Um, and I'm probably ill pronouncing that. Oh my god, I think I am. I think I might be saying the uh, uh, Seiya, Seiya, yeah, Seiya Katagi. Anyways, so Seiya and Kota end up nail gunning their way through these zombies, and Seiya ends up desperately calling for aid and help and whatever. And so we eventually have it uh, to where Rai and Kamuro end up hearing them and end up like trying to say like, "Hey guys, you want to come with us to like make our freaking way out of here?" And so we end up having all these guys eventually going to the nurse's office, and we end up having this ditzy nurse. Just God, this girl just, I don't know how she can be a nurse with like this girl just seems so just dumb. To be brutally honest, the nurse, seriously. Uh, uh, Shizuka Marikawa? Shizuka Marikawa? So, this nurse, sadly just dumb, and she lets a guy just get gobbled right in front of her because this guy is going out of his way to protect this nurse because he's like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. I need to protect her. And so while he goes and tries to protect this nurse, this zombie ends up just taking a nibble out of this guy. And so this guy is to eventually become a zombie. And so we end up having some girl swooping in to try and protect this nurse and to just say, hey, nurse, we got to get out of here. So we have it to where Kuruo Rai and Seiya and everybody, they're all making their way out to the buses, and they make it to the buses, and we end up having a teacher called Koshi Shido. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Shido. He is going along with a bunch of students, and this teacher is pushing all the students to like run ahead of him, so that way he can be the very last teacher. And so we end up having it to where there's some kid who ends up stumbling and falling, and he's like, oh my god, I ended up hurting myself. Like, teacher, you're gonna help me get to um get to the buses, kind of thing. And the teacher's like, heck no. And so the teacher ends up kicking this student down and then just running it to the bus. And so we end up having this, of course, who would be driving this bus? Of course, it has to be this nurse. And I'm like, out of all the people to be driving this bus, it has to be the nurse. Really? This makes no sense. But when looking at it, I guess she's like the most neutral character out of these people, and so I guess it does make sense. So we end up having this teacher or this nurse driving this bus, and crap is happening. We end up having it to where this nurse has to just try to like forcibly drive her way through any number of things. And so we eventually end up having it to where they all stop at some point to decide who the leader of this group is going to be, of this group of the people in this bus. And immediately we have it to where the teacher decides that he is to, well, he's the oldest, and like, well, he might as well be the leader, because when looking at it, he saved all those kids to make their way to this bus. So, and we have it to where there's two younger girls that are just kind of like, yeah, like he's our savior, and so on and so forth. These two students, because they are obviously brainwashed by this teacher to kind of be like his underlings, whatever they say he'll do, kind of thing, because they had been brainwashed by this teacher because of all this craziness going on. And so we end up having it to where Rai, I don't know how it's pronounced. Rei. I don't know how it's pronounced because I don't remember. I don't remember half. I don't remember all of these freaking character names. So I'm just kind of scraping by, just try to remembering who these characters are, reasonably with their names, because I remember all the action. I don't remember anything after that. So yeah. So we end up having it to where Rai ends up deciding to, like, well, if this teacher is going to be our leader, then I am not gonna be a part of this. No. And so she ends up getting out of the bus, and she's like, dude, if he's gonna be the leader, I'm out of here. So we end up having it to where both Rai and Kamuro end up deciding, like, Kamuro is basically going wherever Rai is going to go. And so he ends up following after her. And what ends up happening is that we have it to where there is I believe, a bus that ends up going and uh, sliding into where uh, to where Rai and Kamuro are, and causes this big explosion-ish like thing that has it to where both Rai and Kamuro have to figure a way, because they are kind of underneath this like bridge like thing, this tunnel-ish like thing, and so there's kind of no way around to get back onto this to where they are at. So we end up having it to where the group is separated between these people and the bus, and so they pretty much end up saying it's like, well, hey, like just go on without us, and we'll kind of get back with you people, and like so we end up eventually having Kamuro and Rai ended up going on and finding a police vehicle, and they end up finding a gun in there, and so recently that's kind of what really for the bulk of the point happens within these first 5 episodes. But yeah, so there are some interesting things going on in here, but I can't help but thinking like there's a lot of cool things happening within these episodes. And I can't wait to like go into these episodes more and recant about them and whatever. There's probably some things that I probably rushed about, but there's also some things that I was like, I don't exactly remember every little bit of everything. But yeah, so going into these episodes, I like this show. I really enjoyed it. And then going back in here, I'm like, oh yeah, this did happen in this episode, and so on and so forth. And so, really, I like this show, but we'll see where it goes. So, if people want me to review this more, then I'll check the review out and see, like, oh, okay, great. Like, people wanted to see more of this, hear more about this show. Because probably a lot of people watch this and are like, yeah, we like this anime. This is really fun. I wish they honestly would have done more of this show, or like, because we have it to where I think that this show has just a very odd ending. I think towards the tail end of it, like we had a very solid beginning, but eventually the very end of the show just kind of the way it ends is kind of like it's sad, but it's also just like man, that just sucks how it just kind of just ends. Uh, I wish that this show would have really gone on and just really would have like kept going because I think especially when they get to the hotel thing, like I think the show really picks up then when we have the entire group going into this hotel where eventually they end up having to forcibly go and save this little kid. Like I think that is the best thing that ends up happening in this show, uh, bar none. Kind of like cryptically talking about it, but still, like I think that part there is probably the best thing of this show, where we have it to where one the girls kind of cut loose, and you get to see a thing or there because or you get to see a thing here or there because reasonably basically one fan service, but on top of that, it's like, dude, hey, the world could end tomorrow. We could all die tomorrow. So hey, how about you just like uh, look at this and look at that and whatever. And so yeah, High School of the Dead, pretty. It's a pretty uh, great anime just because it's. I like the aggressiveness of it. Like, really, there's very few animes that I'm like, come on, let's get to it. Let's get to the nitty and gritty. There's a lot of times where we have a lot of slow moving animes, and yeah, so probably a lot of people are like, well, dude, you haven't seen enough animes. You don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, like this, I like how quick paced this is, and how we also get eventually slow motion things happening going on, where there's obvious points where it's like, well, we definitely had to slow this down, but But if anything, this anime feels very quick paced. So I'm going to get out of here and enjoy what is to be, I guess, hopefully, maybe quite possibly, the rest of this anime if people are interested. But other than that, I am going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.